This Film is Lit, the podcast where we finally settle the score on one simple question. Is the book really better than the movie? I'm Brian, and I have a film degree, so I watch the movie, but don't read the book.
And I'm Katie. I have an English degree, so I do things the right way and read the book before we watch the movie.
So prepare to be wowed by our expertise and charm as we dissect all of your favorite film adaptations and decide if the silver screen or the written word did it better. So turn it up, settle in, and get ready for spoilers, because this film is lit. I don't know what's going to happen tonight. At this point, I can't remember who loves us and who hates us, but I do know that we are going to own this dance. Let's make tonight our bitch. It's Vampire Academy, and this film is lit. Hello and welcome back to This Film is Lit, the podcast where we talk about movies that are based on books. We have quite a bit to get into. I think we have every one of our segments, right?
I think so.
Yeah, so let's just jump right in. If you have not read or watched Vampire Academy, congratulations. But here is a brief summary of the film in Let Me Sum Up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
This summary is sourced directly from Wikipedia, and as such, its veracity is questionable. Debatable. Rose Hathaway, a 17-year-old Dampier guardian in training, and her best friend Maroi, Princess Vasilisa Lisa Dragomir, are living discreetly, having escaped from the St. Vladimir's Academy boarding school 1 year prior. Dampiers are vampire-human hybrids trained to protect the Maroi, mortal vampires with a normal lifespan and death, who tend to have magical powers and belong to royal bloodlines. The girls are found and forced to return to St. Vladimir's Academy, where they encounter the Strigoi, the undead vampires of legend, which Maroi become if they completely drain their victims of blood or are turned. Lisa is ostracized by her peers as Rose starts to form an attraction to her Russian Dampier mentor and fellow guardian, Dmitry Belikov. Mysterious messages threatening Lisa start to appear, written in blood on her wall, and an exploding memorial to her family in the school church. They suspect that it is the work of classmate Mia Rinaldi, who had dated Lisa's now-deceased non-monogamous brother Andre. Non-monogamous? That's one way to say he cheated on her. Well, actually, no. Because, right, I think they do say that that was his thing.
Yeah, he dated girls, but on the down low, kind of.
But I think they make a note that it specifically said just casual.
Yeah,
I don't think there was any
player.
Right, but I don't think there was any implications that he was in a. So I guess non-monogamous works in the sense that I don't think there was any implications that he was telling them that he was the only person.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I guess that works. It's just funny seeing that written out there about a high school student. Who had dated, is it Lisa or Lisa?
I think it's Lisa.
Lisa's now deceased non-monogamous brother Andre, and now directs her hatred towards Lisa as the only surviving member of the Dragomir line. I don't know if this thing will mention it, but her family died in a car accident. The rest of her family, including Andre. Manipulating two other students using sex, she persuades them to help persuades them to help her spread rumors about Rose. Maroi, Christian Ozera, viewed poorly by his peers as both his parents became Strigoi, tries to romance Lisa, but Rose blocks him by lying to them both. Christian and Lisa begin to bond regardless. Later, Rose investigates the disappearance of Sonia Karp, a teacher who helped her and Lisa escape, and finds video footage of Karp mentally unstable from using spirit magic. She also discovers that Lisa has the same rare power that the founder of their school, St. Vladimir, had, that of spirit, a power which enables the caster to heal ailments and save the dying. However, using spirit also drains the user's life energy gradually with each use. This is all news to me, having watched the movie. Rose demands headmistress Ellen Kirova show her classified information on Karp, who reveals that Karp became Strigoi and escaped before disappearing. At the same time, dead animals begin to appear wherever Lisa goes. At the Equinox dance, Rose discovers Mia is not responsible for the dead animals. Soon, Lisa is kidnapped, and Rose, Dmitry, and Christian rush to save her. The Moroi responsible for the kidnapping and the threats against Lissa is Viktor Dashkov, a previous candidate for the throne who suffers from the chronic disease Sandowski's syndrome. He plans to use Lissa to cure himself, although the cure would eventually cost Lissa's life. Once captured and placed in the secure cells beneath the school, Victor explains to Rose that she bonded to Lissa, that the reason she bonded to Lissa is because she was shadow kissed, having been brought back to life by Lissa's magic during the car crash, I think.
Yes.
While they are talking, Victor's daughter Natalie, who had befriended both Lissa and Rose and was a very insecure student at the school, is enacting the tools of Victor's escape. I'm editing as I go here to make this make as much sense as possible. She turns Strigoi by draining her crush to death. Dimitri comes and kills Natalie and detains Victor. During Vampire Queen Tatiana Ivashkov's speech at the end of the film, Lissa steps in and gives a speech of her own. She announces that spirit is her type of magic and that it is thanks to Rose that she can master it. Rose then meets Dimitri outside and asks about his feelings for her. He states that he can't love her because if there was any danger between Rose and Lissa, he would save Rose instead of Lissa. She gives Dimitri a kiss on the cheek and walks back to the academy. In a mountain cave nearby the academy, Karp leads a horde of Strigoi. The end. Did that make sense? No, of course not. It's insane. We'll get into it. Katie, we do have a Guess Who this week. So let's go ahead and play.
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must know.
Get used to disappointment.
Okay.
We do have some Guess Who's. I think that most of these will be pretty easy for you. I just really wanted to read them out loud.
Fantastic.
He was older than us, maybe mid-20s.
Yeah, okay, that's easy.
And as tall as I'd figured, probably 6'6"
Jesus.
or 6'7".
Huge.
We're going to put a pin in that just for a second.
Okay.
I need romance writers to understand how fucking tall that is.
That is gigantic.
That's huge.
That's basketball
player.
Yes,
that's like the average height of an NBA player.
Yeah.
I'm
a gigantic person, and I'm 6'3".
6'3", and I love that about you, but I also often think that you're far too tall.
I often don't even realize how tall I am compared to most people, and I'm 6'3".
Yeah.
Yeah.
6'6", 6'7" is insane.
Yeah.
Okay, moving forward. And under different circumstances, I would have thought he was hot. Shoulder-length brown hair, tied back in a short ponytail, dark brown eyes, a long brown coat, a duster,
Nice.
I thought it was called. But his hotness was irrelevant now.
Okay. So that's Dimitri?
Yes.
Yeah. I keep forgetting his name because I keep wanting to say Vladimir, but Vladimir is the school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dimitri.
Yeah. The last line is not super relevant to his description, but I simply had to include it.
Why is his hotness irrelevant now?
Because
And
this
why is
is
she not in
when they meet him, he's like capturing them to take them back to the school.
Okay.
He's like bounty hunting them, basically.
Yeah. Okay.
With her pretty face and pale blonde hair, she looked more like an angel than a vampire. Her pale jade green eyes watched me with concern.
I'd say that's Lissa.
It is Lissa.
Yeah, this is very easy.
The figure stepped forward, and in the poor lighting, familiar features materialized. Messy black hair, pale blue eyes, a perpetually sardonic smirk.
Okay, so I don't know. Perpetually sardonic smirk. I think this could be Christian. I'm trying to think of who the other people that would be important enough to get an important character description. I don't know if he would have a perpetually sardonic smirk, but I guess I could see it. Messy black hair makes sense. Pale blue. I'm trying to think who else it would even make sense. I don't think this sounds like Natalie or Victor or I guess or the headmistress of the school, or I'm trying to think of other her friend is a ginger.
His name is Mason.
Mason, played by I say Cal Kestis. That actor plays her friend in the movie, the Ginger. He plays there's a series of Star Wars video games called like Jedi Survivor, and he is the main character in that. And they modeled the character after him, and it was really surprising to me to be like,
Nice.
oh, that's Cal Kestis.
Good for him.
Yeah, like he's the actor that plays that character. Anyways, so, and I'm cheating by looking at the last one here because I would have said that this is Rose. The perpetually sardonic smirk to me says Rose, but the description doesn't make sense. Like the rest of it doesn't make sense. So I'm going to say that this is Christian.
It is Christian.
Okay.
I figured that would be the one you struggled with the most, but I simply had to read the line, a perpetually sardonic smirk.
Yeah. It's great.
All right, last one. That genetic combination had given me skin the same color as the inside of an almond, along with what I liked to think were semi-exotic desert princess features. Big dark eyes and hair so deep brown that it usually looked black.
So this, considering it's written from first person perspective, and I assume the movie is similar, this would be Rose.
Yes.
And it fits for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
The inside of an almond is an interesting way to describe your skin tone, because the inside of an almond is just white.
Yes.
Unless she means the outside of the inside of an almond.
That's what I presume was probably meant, is like when you crack the shell
the
part.
Shell on an almond, the inside,
the outside
skin,
of the inside.
Yes, the skin, not the shell of the almond, is like a light brown.
But if you like slice open the actual meat of an almond,
it's
it's
white,
like beige.
It's
skin
like
tone the color of my skin.
Yeah.
Like
so I'm not sure what what we're actually going for there. If it's supposed to be like she has darker skin or like beige skin, I don't know. But
yeah, I don't
interesting.
Know. So there's a lot going on there.
But yeah, that's definitely Rose. All right. Well, that was very easy. Yeah, that was, which usually for these YA kind of things, it's pretty simple. So, all right. Do I have questions? Let's get into it. Was that in the book?
Gaston, may I have my book, please?
How can you read this? There's no pictures.
Well, some people use their imagination.
So we're introduced right off the bat to our two main characters, Rose and Lissa. There might be some backstory before this, I don't remember. But we jump in and they're on the run and they're staying at like an apartment, or they're living in an apartment or something. I don't know. But they're trying to blend in, and we're in Lissa's room, and Rose is like making fun of her because she has a poster of Jimmy Carter on her wall, and Rose is like, "Why do you have a poster of a weird U.S. president on your wall?" I was like, first off, of all the U.S. presidents, maybe the least weird.
Maybe the least weird.
Maybe the least weird president to have on your wall. But she's like, why do you have... And so they basically, she says, oh, you told me to blend in. So it's like a normal human thing, right? To have but I'm like, but you are human. Like, I know you're a vampire, but you live in human society. You exist in human. I don't... Like, that was very silly to me of like, oh, that's a human. You're not an alien. Like, that's an alien thing. You know what I mean? These vampires grow up and exist in normal human world for the most part. I mean, I don't know. I thought it was very silly. But does Lissa have a poster of Jimmy Carter on her wall to blend in? Because I thought that was very funny.
There's no mention of a Jimmy Carter poster in the book. I am of two minds about the way that the movie points out that all of the students would be very sheltered from the human world. Or most of them, I guess, a lot of them. On the one hand, it is true, because we find out that most of the students at St. Vladimir's have basically been raised there since they were children.
Okay.
So they would be like maybe more sheltered than you're thinking.
Okay, that's fair, I guess.
But on the other hand, the way that the movie communicates this is kind of silly.
Yeah.
And also absolutely dates the film.
I thought that was particularly funny, the line you have mentioned here. I was like, why would you include the number?
Yeah, like when they're driving the girls back into the boarding school, and Rose is like, goodbye, Facebook. Goodbye, iPhone 5.
Yeah, just say goodbye,
say
iPhone. Like, why would you say iPhone 5? It's such a specific way to date your movie for no reason
I
when
don't
you
know.
could just say iPhone and assume, iPhones will be around for a while at least.
Yeah.
iPhone 5, that's like a 1-year thing, 2-year thing tops. Like, it's so stupid. Whatever. Okay, so, but now since they're on the run, Lissa, and because we don't really know at this point how, we know, I think we've explained that Lissa is a vampire or a Moroi, who's a type of vampire. But they're like they're mortal. They have normal lifespans, and they don't like kill people to feed. They just drink. But they have to drink blood, and because they're on the run from the school, they have to. She needs to feed somewhere, and so Rose lets her feed off of herself. And this was like the first scene in the trailer, and we were joking when we were talking about this movie beforehand. I think I read the description or something, and we were joking about how it sounded very sounded like there was maybe going to be some queer undertones in this relationship between Rose and Lissa. And the very first scene in both the trailer and the movie is Rose offering her neck to Lissa so that she can feed off of her. And then when Lissa bites her, she reacts in like what I can only describe as ecstasy, like she's having an orgasm. And I need to know if that scene comes from the book, because I was like, okay, so this seems very overtly like we're doing some sort of queer overtones even at this point. And I wanted to know if that scene came from the book, and if specifically if Rose reacts that way to Lissa feeding on her.
Yes. All of this is directly from the book. If you'll recall, I started reading this book, page 3. We were in the car.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is this the gayest thing I've ever read? While we were in the car. Okay, so here's what happens. Her fangs bit into me hard, and I cried out at the brief flare of pain. Then it faded, replaced by a wonderful golden joy that spread through my body. It was better than any of the times I'd been drunk or high. Better than sex, or so I imagined, since I'd never done it. It was a blanket of pure, unrefined pleasure, wrapping me up and promising everything would be right in the world. On and on it went. The chemicals in her saliva triggered an endorphin rush, and I lost track of the world, lost track of who I was.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's very explicitly.
Yeah.
This is like a sex analogy.
Yeah.
Spoilers, dear listener, that will not go
that
anywhere.
That will not pan out.
In
at
any way
least
whatsoever.
Not in this book.
Yeah, there is zero, apart from that one moment, there is zero in the rest of this film that remotely feels like it has that same energy, which is very strange to me, but glad to know it's from the book. So it becomes very apparent in this movie that, and this movie is exhausting. It's nonstop, but part of the reason it's exhausting is that our main character, Rose, is a nonstop quip machine. And I mentioned in the prequel, in a lot of the reviews, they compared Rose and specifically the performance by the actress, can't remember her name now, but the daughter of Leah Thompson is who that is. That they compared it to Juno, to Elliot Page's performance in Juno. And after watching the movie, I definitely get that. One, I think a big part of it, and when I was watching this trailer, I turned to you, I was like, I think a big reason that people are comparing it is just because the actress who plays Rose in this looks like Page did in Juno a little bit.
Yeah.
Just like their face shape or whatever. But apart from that, the nonstop, quippy, sarcastic, just overly hyper aware, feels like it's written by an adult teenager-ness of it. To me, it was so painfully mid-2000s, and I wanted to know if the book had that same kind of energy from Rose.
She's a little quippy. I wouldn't call her a nonstop quip machine in the way that she is in the movie.
Yeah.
But she's definitely got that kind of a similar vibe. I felt like that was a strange comparison when we talked about it in the prequel, just because Vampire Academy, the movie, came out in 2014 and Juno came out in 2007. And I felt like there were so many other like female characters to reach for in that intervening 7 years But
Maybe.
but like after we watched it, I could definitely see it.
Yeah.
Having watched the movie, it's really there in like her facial expressions too.
The intervening years, I think it's just the most notable, like, that kind of character that people could immediately jump to. And I think a big part of it, like I said, is that in this movie, the actress who plays Rose just kind of looks like Juno.
Yeah.
Like, just kind of, I think is another part of it. But yeah, it's, oh my God, it was so, it felt like being transported back to 2007. I was like, oh God, it's exhausting, honestly. So then they get taken back to the school. They get captured and taken back to the school, the academy. And while they're there, we then get a big exposition dump. I think it's a voiceover from Rose explaining like everything that goes on at St. Vladimir's Academy and how the Dampiers trained to protect the Moroi, blah blah blah. But one of the things that she explains is that the Moroi, apart from being vampires, also do magic.
Yes.
And specifically elemental magic.
Yes.
Like they can do like fire, air, water, and earth bending, basically.
Basically, yeah.
And I needed to know if that came from the book because I was like, wow, okay. We're layering hats on hats here at this point, but sure.
That does come from the book. The Moroi all have element-based magic, and they all specialize in one element, like around puberty. But Lissa is 17 and still has not specialized, so that's part of her like
yeah, they keep saying
conflict.
She hasn't declared.
Yeah,
I think it's the word they use in the movie, but yeah. But I just mentioned it, but man, the movie is for the first 20 minutes or so. It's just nonstop exposition dump after exposition dump after exposition dump because there's so much to set up in this world. Like, again, we were like 15 minutes into this point, and I was like, this is too many ideas.
Yeah.
There's too much going on, and I wanted to know. I assume clearly it probably was because I can't imagine the movie. Usually, screenwriters pretty good at. It's like one of the main things in screenwriting is like you gotta streamlining, paring ideas down,
hacking and slashing,
and like usually in adaptations, that's what people complain about is that movies strip too much out of what was in the book originally. So I didn't imagine that the movie was adding a bunch of stuff here, but I gotta ask anyways. Does the book have quite as much exposition to set up so many things at the beginning?
My God, yes. This book is almost nothing but world building exposition info dump. Like those are the three main words that I would use to describe this book. The experience of reading it, unfortunately, reminded me a lot of reading Divergent.
Yeah.
Just like very heavy on like this kind of shaky world building where there's just like stuff piled on stuff piled on stuff.
It's too many ideas and none of it has a steady, like a sturdy enough foundation.
Yes.
We're piling more and more ideas to kind of like try to camouflage the fact that like.
Yeah. And we're all just clinging on for dear life, trying to follow this.
Yeah. I honestly, even Divergent, I think, is simpler than from my memory. Feels like it's not quite as many ideas stacked on. There's still too many ideas in Divergent, but not. Even that in comparison felt like it's funny you say that because I was like, even in comparison, Divergent seemed really streamlined in comparison to my experience watching this movie. Which again, I remember that was one of the main things we complained about in Divergent was it was too much stuff. But man, it's absurd in this movie. So we move forward a little bit, and we kind of get our first glimpse of what Lissa's abilities. You said she hasn't declared like a specific part of she's not part of the Water Clan or the Earth Clan or the Fire Clan or whatever. But we see that they're standing just like in the courtyard, and a raven or a crow or whatever.
And this is like a flashback. This is a memory.
Right. Yeah, it is a flashback, and a corvid of some sort flies into a statue. And it's like flopping around on the ground, dying/dead. And Lissa runs over and is able to like bring it back to life. She does something that heals it or whatever, and brings it back to life. And I wanted to know if that came from the book, and then also, but then she passes out after she does it. Like it somehow, like I guess the exertion of doing this spell, this magic, like forces her to pass out. Then the camera cuts, and we see a woman standing in a window, like watching them. But it was so quick that I could not figure out who it was supposed to be, and I was hoping the movie would explain who that was. I have a parenthetical here that says, I assume we'll get an answer to this at some point. We did not, from my memory. But I could not tell who it was because it was kind of far away and so quick. And I wanted to know if all that came from the book.
It does. Alyssa does bring a dead raven back to life in a flashback in the book. And I'm pretty sure in the book it's Mrs. Carp who witnesses this happen. And I don't recall anything in the movie that would make me think it was different.
Here's my problem with that. I agree it looked kind of like Mrs. Carp. My confusion with that is that I swear in that scene, they had just been talking to her in the courtyard, had they not? And then she like walks away. And then I swear she walks away from them having that conversation, and then the bird flies into the window or into the statue and like dies, and she heals it. And then right after that happens, she looks up to like the 3rd floor and Mrs. Carp is in the window. And I was like, wasn't she just right next to you guys like 30 seconds ago? That was my confusion with who it was.
Maybe she can apparate.
Okay, because
I don't know.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch it, but that was my confusion because I agree. I was like, oh, I think that might be Mrs. Carp, but I was like, but wasn't she just right there?
Well, the other thing, and I would have to go back and look in the book, but the book is so like, with all of the like flashbacks and memories and things, and like going into like different perspectives.
Yes,
we'll get to that.
That's another thing. Yeah.
The book is so like all over the place. It was really, really hard to follow. It was hard to keep track of like what was happening when and like who was where.
I will say the movie nailed that because I had that same experience watching the movie of not knowing.
I will say I think maybe the other character that it would possibly make sense for that to have been would be Natalie.
Yeah, maybe.
Because obviously Natalie and her father find out somehow that Lyssa can do this.
That could make sense.
So maybe it was supposed to be Natalie.
That could make sense. That makes more sense to me than being Miss Carp, because like I say, and I swear that they had just talked to Miss Carp like in the courtyard 30 seconds ago, but it's maybe not. I truly don't recall. So.
Also, to your parenthetical, I just want to say that the number of times reading the book that I thought to myself, I'll assume we'll get an answer at some point, was actually wild. I think we had very similar experiences.
Sounds like it. So then we get Rose has to get back. They've been taken back to the school, and then she has to get back into the swing of things and get back to training. And she goes to like there's like a night training class she goes to, and her that Mason, I guess he said his name was
the redhead.
Yeah. They're hanging out and they're like chit chatting. And she shows up, and as she gets there, I think Mason or somebody had just said something about like her getting her ass kicked or something. I can't remember. Like something about her like getting her ass kicked or something. And she shows up and she says, "Surely you have something more interesting to discuss than my ass." And Mason turns to her and goes, "Your boobies?" And I died a little inside, and I need to know if that line is in the book because it's terrible. And my in that moment, my dreams of maybe not in that moment, but I was getting to the point at this, we're like 15-20 minutes in. I'm like, my desire for this film to be like camp,
like secretly genius camp
was just, it was withering and dying before my eyes, and there was nothing Lyssa could do to save it. And this line was one of those where I'm like, this doesn't feel like intentional, like camp. It just feels like bad.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know if that line was in the book.
So I went and checked the corresponding scene in the book, and I did not find this line. However, that does not mean that this line appears nowhere in this book, because it is unfortunately very on brand for this book's humor. The book also never shuts up about how hot Rose is and how great her body and in particular her boobs are. So it's also very unfortunately on brand from that perspective as well. And I have a tiny little excerpt here. This is just one example, but the book is full of shit like this. It's like every couple pages. And I suddenly realized I was only in jeans and a bra. a black bra at that.
We know that means whore
Yes.
from that one movie. I can't remember now. What was that?
That was 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah, 10 Things I Hate About You. That was black underwear. But
Yeah, a black bra at that. I knew perfectly well there weren't a lot of girls in this school who looked as good in a bra as I did. Bro, bro, come on.
Nice. Fantastic.
The whole book is full of shit like that.
Yeah. To be fair, the movie, there's a lot of cleavage, a lot of Rose's cleavage in this movie. They don't skimp on that for sure.
Book accurate.
Yeah.
Apparently.
So then we get our first instance of this, which you mentioned earlier, the jumping around of perspectives. And we find out that Rose can essentially like mind meld into Lissa's head and see what she's seeing. And like either, I think, experience her thoughts. She says the psychic connection only goes one way. And I can't remember if she can like psychically communicate with Lissa or if Lissa's thoughts like come to her. I think it's Lissa's thoughts come to her, basically. Yeah. And I wanted to know if that came from the book, if she can like get into Lissa's head and hear her thoughts and see what she's seeing.
Yes, it does. Rose and Lissa have a psychic bond that allows Rose to feel what Lissa is feeling, as well as, like we saw in the movie, like enter her mind and like basically watch like a video camera, like watch what Lissa is doing and seeing as she's experiencing it. And you're correct that it only goes one way. So Rose can do this, but Lissa like doesn't know that she's doing it.
Yeah. And I think, am I wrong that it's explained at the end of the film that is because of the shadow kiss thing? Okay. That where when Lissa brought her back to life after the car accident, that created that.
Yes, that created that psychic bond.
Which that's fine, I think, like as a thing, like that's
like,
a fine story element.
And here's the thing is that none of the many elements in this are like bad or uninteresting.
Yeah.
There's just too many of them.
Just far too many, yeah. Yeah, this one feels kind of like it could work if done in the right way. And if there weren't 8 million other like layers going on at the same time. But this feels like it could be an interesting way to like, especially with the kind of story this is about, like being like about like gossipy, like like relationships and stuff, her being able to like see what Lissa's doing and like who she's talking to without her knowing and stuff kind of feels like it could be an interesting layer to that. And it was one of the things that I thought felt the most, I don't know, that worked the most potentially. Then we get a scene where throughout the film we have had a voiceover from Rose. But then we get to a point where Rose literally has a line where she says, "And now for the mandatory cafeteria scene." And I was like, wait a second. Is Rose Rose omniscient? Is she aware she's in a movie? Or is it like I get we're doing like a tongue-in-cheek thing where like it could just be she's saying that because she's narrating her to herself like it's a movie. But because we are watching a movie, there's like an extra meta level to it for us. But to me, it came across like, oh, she knows she's in a movie. This is very strange to me. And it was the only time I think in the whole movie where that happened, where she like calls out something as being like an element of a film.
It seems like she's calling out the fact that they're in a movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where it has that level of like detached, like meta irony or whatever. But it was, and I think that's what made it confusing is that it was like the singular time that happened. And I was like, wait, what is going on here? So by comparison, does the book have obviously it's from first person from her perspective, but does it have any sort of like omniscient meta level where Rose seems to know, or is like, or because like, I guess a similar thing in the novel might be that she is like writing this or whatever, you know what I mean? That it's
definitely
like a journal
not writing it. No. And I don't recall anything like this happening in the book. I wonder if what the movie was trying to do was go for like a Gossip Girl-esque kind of narration, which is an idea that I'll return to later.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that was a thought that I had. And I wrote down the same thing that you did. I think it's the only scene,
the only one I remember
that has like this specific kind of meta element to it.
Yeah.
Because Rose does like speak directly to the audience.
Yes, but it's in a
times.
standard narration
Yeah.
way of like,
Yes.
that's me, I'm Rose. Like, or I don't even know if she says that's me, but like, because that also kind of does that thing where it pulls back a layer and it's like, you know, describing what you're seeing.
Yeah. Well, like particularly at the beginning when she's explaining like Moroi and Dampier and all that stuff.
Yeah. But something about that doesn't feel, I guess that maybe is equally meta in a sense of like, well, who would she be talking to? Like, obviously it's us, the audience, and thus obviously she's kind of omnisciently aware she's in a movie. But specifically calling out like narrative elements of a film feels
that's
like
what
an
makes
extra
it odd.
layer of strange that I find kind of, I just found it kind of strange in a way that I couldn't wrap my head around what we were doing. Well, and to me, I think it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, who knows? Because it would make sense for the narration to have been planned the whole time, but it also wouldn't surprise me if the narration was one of those last gasp, let's try to rescue this thing and make any of it make sense kind of things. So let's add it's a very common tactic. If you have a movie that you're worried, I don't know if any of this makes sense or tracks at all. Let's have our main character narrate for the audience to explain things that we didn't do a good enough job.
This does seem like it may have been a likely candidate for that. But I could also see it being planned.
Yeah, and to be fair, even if they planned the narrative the whole time, or to have the narration the whole time, the voiceover, parts of that voiceover could have been last minute, ads, last minute notes, and maybe at some point, because it could be a thing, it could be like a thing where, sure, they planned to have the voiceover narration the whole time, but they got done with it and they're like, this movie's boring and it sucks. Okay, let's get a writer's room in here. We need to punch up some jokes. So one of the easiest ways to punch in and add jokes is to add lines of dialogue for your narrator to do, because you don't have to film anything. You just get the actress
you
in
just
the voice
pull that
booth
one person in
and have her say some stuff. So you add, so they have a writer's room write a bunch of like, watch the movie and add, basically add jokes to it as they go. And because this feels like that kind of thing. It feels like somebody roasting the movie as you're going. So I'm like, oh, that's probably what it is actually, is they had a writer's room go through and like, all right, add jokes that we could have the voiceover say. And they came up with a list of jokes and like added a bunch of them in. Maybe, I don't know, but that's kind of what it feels like. So then I talked about in the summary that Mia is one of the like kind of minor antagonists of the film that does not like Lissa for convoluted reasons. Mainly being that Lissa's dead brother cheated on her in her eyes.
Yeah.
Even though, because they were like hooking up, and then he was also hooking up with other women, and she like was in love with him, and then anyway, so now that he died, she has to take all of her anger out just on Lissa. Very strange.
Yeah.
But at one point, she's like mocking Lissa or Rose or somebody, and Rose is like threatens to like beat her up. She's like coming over. She's like, I'm gonna punch you or whatever. And Mia stops Rose from like fighting her by saying that the school would kick her out. And I was like, but you don't even want to be there. Like they tried to escape already, and they very explicitly don't want to be in the school. I'm like, then get kicked out. Like, what do you care? But is that in the book? Why does she care if she gets kicked out?
So she cares because they would kick Rose out, but they wouldn't kick Lissa out.
Oh.
And Rose can't not be there to protect Lissa.
Okay, why?
Because they're bonded.
Okay, sure, fine. All right. I'm not.
And they're BFFs.
Yeah, okay.
And potentially lovers.
And that's fair. Like if it's her best friend, like whatever. I get that. It's just to me, I guess I didn't interpret it as they would only kick out Rose.
Yeah.
Because I was like, well, why would they? Okay, sure. Doesn't somebody have to protect Lissa?
Well, Dimitri would, but
okay.
But they're bonded.
Okay, sure. So then we get this scene where, and I don't know why this happens. I have a question about it later. I legitimately did not understand what was going on in this scene. But Rose grabs one of the other random Moroi.
Yeah.
And is like, hey, let's go hook up.
Yes.
And I don't know what her motivation. We'll get to that later. But I just had to talk about this line because it's one of the worst things I've ever heard in a movie. Like, it legitimately made me angry. It's like, how do you write this? And I need to know if it's in the book, because they're making out, and then the guy starts feeding on her. He like bites her.
Yeah,
neck.
he like tries to bite her.
Yeah, or tries to bite her, and she's like, "Whoa, stop it!" Bah. And then he says to her, like while she's protesting or something at one point, he's like, "Oh, didn't Lissa feed on you or whatever?" And then he says, "Once you have Fang, you never go." But he trails off, and like
Yeah.
she interrupts him before he can finish the line.
Mm-hmm.
What possible ending to that line could he have said that would have made any sense and worked in the context of that rhyming line?
You got me, Chief.
And not in the book, I assume?
It's not in the book. I
Once you go Fang, you never go bang? I don't know what that means. There's no...
Well, here's the thing. Neither did the writers.
Yes,
That's
and
why
that's why
they have him.
didn't...
That's
yes.
why they stop him.
Yes.
Because there's no possible way to finish that makes sense.
And to be fair, this is another one. I think he's not facing the camera. That could be another one of those
God.
writer's room punch-ups. We need to add more jokes. I don't know. What's that one offensive joke about? Yeah. Oh, let's tweak it to be about vampires. Okay, but like, what do we change it to? Once you go Fang, you'd never go... I don't know. Well, let's just have him. Who cares? We'll put it in and we just won't write the last word of it because it doesn't. It's so infuriating. It's the stupidest thing. Oh my God. So then she's been training with Dimitri on and off throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
He's like a special tutor or something. I don't know. Or
yeah.
she's doing special lessons with him. And I think this is right after the fox scene where somebody kills a fox and like hangs it outside Lissa's room. And she's talking to Lissa. Dimitri's talking to Lissa, and she's like, "Look, I'm tired of running. The next time we meet up, teach me to fight." And I was like, "Isn't that the beginning of this movie? The entire thing that she said that the Dampiers are taught in this school is like combat training and like how to fight to protect the Moroi."
Mm-hmm.
So what what do you need to tell him to teach you to fight? That's like literally the whole point of the school, isn't it?
So I think the movie does kind of a bad job of explaining this, as it does other things. She is in her regular combat classes, but she's getting extra tutoring from Dimitri to make up for having been gone.
Oh.
So
okay.
she's frustrated because he's basically just having her run a bunch instead of like teaching her any combat techniques.
Okay, yeah, I did not get that at all. I mean, we do see him like tell her to do sprints in one like scene. He's like, "All right, do sprints," and she's like, "Okay," but like, and that was like the only contact. I didn't remember any specifics about why. I thought literally he was just like teaching. I didn't know what the context of their meeting up was or whatever, or like why it was happening. Or okay, even still, whatever. I still think it's very dumb to be like, "I'm tired of running. Teach me to fight." It's like, okay, sure, he can teach you more fighting skills, but that's like the whole thing you're doing at this school. It's not like the school hasn't been teaching you to fight. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like normally that line happens in like a thing like in Harry Potter or something where like, "All right, I'm tired of learning defensive spells. Teach me," and like, I don't know, whatever.
Right.
Or something like that. It just doesn't make sense in this context to me because it's like you're already being taught how to fight. That's the whole thing that you explained earlier in the movie. The entire reason this school exists is to teach your stupid people to fight so you can protect vampires. It's so stupid. I want to know if this scene happened in the movie or in the book because I was very confused. We cut to a scene, like we jump forward quite a bit. We cut to a scene where Christian is talking to Lissa in like a library, and all of a sudden, and they've met a couple times at this point, but all of a sudden he's like a Strigoi, or I think it's in the courtyard.
Yeah, it's in the courtyard.
And he's like, he has blood on his face, and because he has become a Strigoi, and I was like, that was out of nowhere. And then a bunch of Strigoi break into the courtyard and just start murdering everybody. And I was like, and then once they murdered Dimitri, I was like, okay, this is a dream. And that's it. What it ends up being is that it ends up like Lissa is having a nightmare. And because Rose can see her, she like also has the same nightmares Lissa does, I guess is the idea. That makes more sense. But I want to know if that happened in the book because I was very confused initially at what was happening.
That does not happen in the book. I really didn't care for it. I didn't feel like it went anywhere or like did anything extra.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't really like it. It's not from the book. The movie also made an aesthetic choice to give the Strigoi red eyes, which I totally get from a visual communication perspective.
Right.
But the book is really clear that you can't always tell right away when a Moroi turns into a Strigoi, which I thought was kind of
Yeah.
spooky, like kind of ooh creepy.
Yeah, it seems like an important element so that
Yeah.
you don't know. Which, to be fair, I think in this scene, isn't he wearing sunglasses at first?
He might have been. I
Specifically to
don't
hide that,
remember.
maybe? Or something? I could be
Maybe.
wrong about that, but I feel like I remember a scene where somebody's wearing sunglasses to hide their red eye, whatever. Then, right after that, also in the courtyard, there's a scene where they see, I don't remember how we get here, but they get to the courtyard and Lissa's backpack is like hanging in the middle of the courtyard. And she walks over to it and her cat is dead inside the backpack, who we met once earlier in the film for like 2 seconds. I forgot she had a cat. Like when this happened, I was like, oh, that's right. She had a cat earlier, because it was literally like one scene, which again, it's fine. I set it up. I forgot. So her cat's dead, and I wanted to know if that comes from book, because she tries to resurrect the cat, but they say it had been dead too long. Like, she can't resurrect things that are dead. She can resurrect things that are mostly dead.
Yes.
Yeah, like literally
Basically.
literally her skills. Like,
Yeah.
it's only mostly dead. So she's unable to resurrect the cat, but when she tries to do it, like the strain of it or whatever opens up a bunch of slices on her arm. She gets like 7 like horizontal slices up her arm that is very evocative of like self-harming or whatever. And I was like, what is happening here? And then again, she like passes out. And I want to know if any of that came from the book or what.
All right. So Lissa doesn't have a cat in the book. There is a cat named Oscar at the beginning of the book, but he belongs to like this guy that they were living with in Portland. And Lissa does not bring the cat with them when they leave. I knew as soon as she brought that damn cat, I was like, that cat's gonna die. I knew.
Did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was like, they're killing that cat, aren't they? And they did. So there are no dead or murdered cats in the book, which might be a good enough reason to give this one to the book, but we'll find out. As far as the cuts, I thought it was interesting that you brought up self-harm, because Lissa actually does self-harm in the book. And it is handled with about as much grace as I could expect for 2007.
Okay.
So I'm going to call that better in the book, because I think it's more interesting than like one scene where cuts magically appear on her arms.
Do they explain do they go into like why she does it in the book? Like, because in the movie it's like a pure accident. It just happens as a result of like her trying to do this magic. Like, she just has these cuts on her arm.
Yeah.
It doesn't really seem like something, she like chose to do or anything like that. It's just like using the magic like exalts this cost on her or whatever. But
I mean, she's got a lot going on in the book. Obviously her whole family died tragically. So she's very like isolated. She gets bullied by her peers. She doesn't want to be there.
Right.
She's really depressed all the time. And then the magic also has like a strain on her mental health.
That's what I was getting at. I was trying to figure out if there was a thing, because we get to a point later where we find out that, and I think I have a question about it here shortly. We find out later that like the power she has, or the type of magic she wields, is like,
it like depletes your life force and sanity.
Yes, exactly. And that becoming a Strigoi like releases the burden of this magic that she's using from her. And I was wondering if maybe she self-harms in the book as like an outlet for that specific thing. Like the fact that her magic is like...
Yeah. It's I mean, that's part of it, but it's just one aspect of why she does that.
I only ask because in the movie they specifically tie these cuts on her arm to the magic itself, and specifically they say, like, we see a thing later where when they're doing some research in the library, they find like the Vladimir, the guy who founded the school or whatever, who also did the same kind of magic that Lissa does. There's a drawing of him with the same cuts on his arm. And so it's like the movie makes it very clear that it's this type of magic that is doing the specific type of magic that Lissa does that is results in these cuts on her arm. And I was wondering if like, it sounds like the movie basically tried to keep the detail of that in without tying it to self-harm directly, because they didn't want to deal with that.
I think
I just think they
yes.
didn't want to like
I think they didn't want to explain it, didn't
and like
want to
have
go
to
into
handle it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, this is like we're making a
Didn't want to try to step around it and potentially risk getting it wrong.
yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is like fair enough. Like if you're worried, like I don't know. I think it's more interesting and compelling if you can do it in a thoughtful and compassionate way. But it is one of those things where like I understand why you might just go around it, but it's interesting to me to then keep that like the very specific element of like the cuts on her arm looking like that and then being like, oh, but it's just the magic. I don't know. This is interesting. Do they say the word fornicating in the book so much? Because in this movie they say the word fornicating maybe more than any movie I've ever seen, which is like only like 3 or 4 times, but that's 3 or 4 times too many for a teen rom-com fantasy.
Yeah.
Why are they saying fornicating so much? Is it in the book?
I don't recall the word fornicating appearing in the book at all. I think I surely would have made note of it because it's kind of a strange, archaic word to include in such a piece of media. There is a lot of sex in the book and like talk about sex. Do you think the movie's trying to get around a censor issue, or
how do they talk about it? What do they say? Like, what word do they use? Do they say sex?
Yeah,
do
they say
fucking?
sex. They don't say fucking. No,
Okay.
I think that would be for young adult. I don't think they would let.
I
them print
agree.
that.
I'm just because I think even in a teen movie you can say sex. I'm pretty sure in like a PG-13 movie you can say, oh, they're gonna have sex. I don't think you have to say they're gonna fornicate. I don't think, but I could be wrong. I don't know.
I don't remember an exhaustive list of what they say in the book, but they use like the normal kind of euphemisms like hook up or bang or
whatever. That's what I'm saying. It just felt so strange to me that this movie said fornicating enough times that I took note of it.
Well, and I think it's always Lissa, isn't it?
I think
was it always maybe they were trying to make her sound
they're doing
like
the thing with I have a question about this later. We'll get to it. The thing with her family. We'll get to it. Maybe. Her family are weird pedants. We'll get to it. I think that
okay.
I need to know I have a question about it in a Lost in Adaptation. We'll get to it. Moving on, there's a scene where at one point they're walking through the courtyard and Rose is like following Lissa or something like that, and she's I don't remember the context. I apologize, but so much happens and like there's so much. It's so nonstop. It's like it's so chaotic. It reminded me a lot. We talked about while watching it. It reminded me of Beastly in that sense that it's just like I felt like it's just getting pummeled with like
it's like nonstop like non sequiturs.
Yeah,
and a lot of what happens looks and feels really similar to other things that happen.
Yes.
So it's hard to keep things in like kind of a chronological order of like what happened
and like
when.
what leads to what and what because it's so also because so in the movie so little of it is explained because a lot of it has to do with like weird rules of magic and like and so little of it and it would suck to over explain it, but it also sucks when you just don't know what's going on. So anyways, she's like following Lissa through the courtyard. And I think a hole opens up in the ground and Rose like steps into it and like breaks her ankle. And then she wakes up in the hospital and her ankle is fine. I don't understand. Did that happen in the book? What happened there?
Okay. So Rose does break her ankle in the book. But it happens when she's like balancing and walking on top of a bench and the wood gives out. Like the wood bench gives out from under her.
Okay.
And it's later explained that Natalie made the bench break with her earthbender powers so that Rose's ankle would break and then Lissa would heal it and then they would like know for sure that Lissa was using her powers to heal.
Okay.
Now, in the movie, Victor also briefly mentions at the end that Natalie used the sidewalk to break Rose's ankle. It's kind of a blink. It was like a blink and you miss it moment in his villain monologue at the end. Now, I will grant that using earth powers to move a cobblestone, I think makes more sense than using earth powers to rot a wooden bench, maybe.
I think they make equal sense.
I guess they make equal sense. But that's what happened.
Okay. That makes sense. I did not understand what was happening there. And again, it's not that. I think the issue with the movie is because I don't want it to sound like I'm complaining that like the movie doesn't meticulously explain every single little thing that happens, and even when it does, there are things that I missed. I think the issue is that there's so much nonsense going, like there's so much going on with so little, and the movie gives you so little time to wrap your head around it, and none of it's intuitive because it's all so like piecemealed together of like all these different types of fantasy story tropes and elements and stuff that your head is spinning the whole time, that it's so hard to like hold all of the little things in. So it's like when that happens, I'm like, okay, but who did that and why? So then when there's one throwaway line at the end where Victor's like, and then Natalie broke your, it's like I've 8,000 other things have happened that I've tried to wrap my head around and figure out, like parse in a way that makes it, I don't know. It's another line I have to know is in the book because people in this movie, in the similar vein of the fornicating thing, don't talk like human teenagers in the year 2014. At one point, somebody asks somebody, and I don't remember who, how long have you been in crush with him?
Yes.
And I just wrote in all caps, why do the people in this movie speak this way? What is happening? Is that in the book?
It's not from the book. And I kind of get what they were trying to do there.
Do you?
Yeah, like it's like a quirky way of saying, like instead of saying like how long have you been in love with him? How long have you been in crush with him? Like quirky.
Okay, sure, I guess. But it doesn't come across that way to me. It just comes across as like aliens speaking. Like it's
Fair
just,
enough.
like the way they talk is just wrong enough that it feels. I don't know. It just makes my brain go, wait, what? That's not how people talk.
Well, you know what that line reminded me of, though? Do you remember The Click?
What is that?
We covered it on this show.
Oh! I have a vague...
The one where it's like the Mean Girls and they have like gossip points.
Boy, that's one of those movies that we've done that, gun to my head, could tell you zero details about it. There are some movies, like I remember a lot of stuff we've done in pretty thorough detail, even some of the like early up, but like that is one of those ones that I zero idea that we covered that, and my brain retained none of the information about. This one will be another one of those movies, by the way, Vampire Academy. I think I'll remember we covered it, but I think I will retain like zero information about
I have a penchant for remembering like kind of specific details. For the most part, I memory wipe after we finish an episode run.
Yeah.
Though.
Oh, that's no.
I cannot possibly keep it all. I always feel bad when people like comment or like message and want to chit chat about something we talked about in an episode
a long time
5 years ago, because I have no memory of that. I
will say it's like it's depending on what it is. There's like a 25% chance if I will remember, like some of the like there are very specific things in episodes we did a long time ago, like very specific discussions that I remember like having. I can't think of an example right now. Or I would have to like think to find a specific example. But there are elements of, like here's the thing. I vaguely remember it was one of the very early episodes when we did Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I picked the movie, and I was very unexpected to pick that. And I think I remember one of the reasons I picked it is that I liked some of the small changes they made to I can't remember her name, the woman's character in that.
Oh, Zooey Deschanel.
Yeah,
character.
I know Zooey Deschanel, but I was trying to remember
I can't remember her
the
name.
character's name.
The only thing I remember about that episode is that you picked the movie.
Right, but Zeva Beeblebrox, Arthur Dent, and what is her name? I can't remember. Whatever. But whatever her character's name is, like I remember specifically, like, oh, I liked some of the changes that the film made to her character and kind of stuff like that. And so like, and that was like the 12th episode we did or something. I don't know. It was very, very early on in our run. But this movie we probably did like 3 years ago. I don't even remember we did it. that name meant nothing to me when you said it.
I know, like, you gave me the blankest look when I said that.
It meant nothing to me. So again, it's like for me, it's like a complete crapshoot. I may remember very specific things about our episodes. Other things I don't even remember that we did it at all. So, yeah. Anyways,
that was a fun tangent.
this specific line, it was the line I used in the intro quote. I want to know if it comes from the book because it cracked me up. Where she says they're getting ready to go to the Equinox ball or whatever, and Rose says, "I can't remember who loves us or hates us," and I was like, "Me either," because who knows.
Yeah, I don't remember this being in the book. I didn't have a digital copy to look up specific lines. Well, I did like a week ago, but then I had to return it. And for some reason that this book is a hot commodity on Libby right now.
Oh.
I was like I looked to see if I could renew it, and there was a list of like 10 people, so no.
I wonder if the show got renewed. Like
maybe.
I don't think
know.
so. I'm pretty sure it got canceled after the first season,
but I'm pretty sure this was not in the book. This movie is a mess, though. I agree with your sentiment.
Yeah. So we get to a scene where during the dress buying montage where they're going to, or I say montage, not montage, the scene where they're going to buy dresses for the party. While they're at the mall, they see this necklace. It's like a $12,000 necklace. And Rose like, ooh, it's so pretty. And then she sees the price tag. It's like, oh, never mind. But then as she's getting ready for the dance, she gets a gift from somebody, and it's from Victor, and it's the necklace. Yeah. And she's like, wow, the necklace. So she puts it on, and then it turns out this necklace has had like a love spell cast on it. And she eventually, after she leaves the party, she goes and she finds Dimitri, and as soon as she sees him, she immediately just like jumps him and is like, we need to have sex right now. And I wanted to know if there's a magic love potion necklace in the book.
Unfortunately, yes. All of this is from the book. In one of the single most confusing reading experiences of my life, because it plays out exactly the same way. She like figures out that Lissa is in grave danger
and goes to get
and has
Dimitri,
been kidnapped, and she goes to get Dimitri,
and then it's like, actually,
and then they just start hooking up.
Yeah, you're like,
I was
what?
like reading it, and I was like, what?
Yeah,
what was happening?
Yeah,
because here's the thing. The very idea that a like compulsion spell can be put onto an object in this universe is introduced in that scene. It's not seeded at all.
Yeah. Oh, it's not even. Is it even in the movie? There's no implication that could be the case.
No,
that you could do that.
That you could do that. No, absolutely.
I mean,
not.
we have seen Lissa specifically has like the power of compulsion.
Yeah,
she can. But specifically, they make a big point. She has to like make eye contact with the people.
It's more like a classic vampire
like
kind
hypnosis
of a
kind of thing.
like ooh, I want to drink your blood. Kind of a
you
thing.
will let me in or whatever. Yeah.
The idea that they can do that to objects, not even hinted at until this scene, and that's
especially because all the other magic is like they're element benders.
Yes,
like,
all the other magic is very like tactile.
Yeah,
and like they're not
you can like blow wind around or like shoot fire and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're not like casting spells and making
or doing
potions
incantations
or
anything like that. No.
But that's one of the main problems that I had with the book is the entire book reads like the author is just playing one big game of yes and with herself.
Yeah.
Like she's just going.
Yeah, just writing in whatever kind of pops into her head.
And nobody stopped her.
Yeah. We're getting towards the end here. Victor has revealed himself. Victor's revealed himself as the villain at this point. They go because he has kidnapped Lissa, and Rose is aware, so she gets Dimitri and the girl from that TV show, the Expanse. That other like the girl who is like the other protector lady who's like she only has a handful of lines.
Yeah.
Who's like with Victor or not Victor, with Dimitri in some of those scenes. The one that breaks in and she gets shot and she's wearing like a bulletproof vest. That actress, she's one of the main characters in the TV show The Expanse. I was like, that's that. She's great in The Expanse, but I had no idea she was in this movie. It's a very small part. But anyways, they go to save Lissa, and when they bust in, they got to fight a bunch of people, and then they're Victor barricades himself in a room with like his main security guy or whatever. And Dimitri is like trying to bang through the door, and the security guy says to himself, "They say Dimitri is a god, but I'm an atheist with a big gun." And I was like, okay, movie. This is the one time where this is the closest to camp this movie. It's like the only time the movie has done anything like this where I felt like, okay, this feels, if the whole movie was written like this, I would have been on board. But this is the only time that this happens, and I love it. And I wanted to know if it was in the book.
That specific line is not from the book.
Okay.
No. In the book, several characters do say that Dimitri is like a god in reference to his fighting skills. I don't think they actually did that in the movie,
I think
though.
they might once. I don't
So
remember.
that line maybe came out of nowhere,
I
but
don't know.
whatever, I guess. Who cares?
Yeah, it may come out once. I just thought it was hilarious. But I'm an atheist. An
It's-
atheist with a big gun.
It's even funnier, too. Correct me if I'm remembering wrong. By the fact that his gun is not big
No, it's
in
just
this
a
scene,
normal
it's like
gun,
a
I
it's like a
think.
little like pistol or
Yeah,
something.
I think
like,
it has like a normal
it's like a handgun.
Yeah, it's not a
It's
particular.
not like he has like an AK-47 or something.
It might be a large caliber pistol. I don't know. I don't remember, but it is a handgun of some sort. But it could have been like a deagle. Like a deagle is like a 50 cal like handgun, which is like a huge hand. I don't know if that's what he has, but you can have very large, quote unquote, large handguns. I just don't know if he does. I don't remember. It's still incredible line. A+. I wish more of the movie had that kind of like energy. So they're a bunch of stuff happens. They're trying to escape or whatever. They break out, but then some Psy hounds show up. Who cares? That's the whole thing. Some of the vampire raise Psy hounds, which are like psychically controlled demon wolf
Yeah.
dog things or whatever. Who cares? But the dogs come. Victor has the dogs go to attack Rose, to kill Rose so that he can get Lissa. But as the dogs come to attack, Christian, who has been shot at this point and is dying, is laying on the ground, and the dogs jump over him, but he musters his last bit of strength to shoot fire out of his hands
Mhm.
and catch the Psy hounds on fire, and they go running away into the distance on fire. And I wanted to know if Christian saves the day in the book like that by flambeing the Psy hounds.
Christian does try to fight the Psy hounds, but he gets taken out, and the Lady Guardian
Yeah. Okay.
like
I don't
bursts
remember her
in
name
from
now.
left field and saves them. Obviously, this is better in the movie.
I guess it's corny, but whatever. It's
Corny, but it actually like makes sense with
Yeah.
Christian's like character
that's
arc.
fair. Yeah.
Whereas in the book, they're like fighting the Psy hounds, and then all of a sudden, the other Guardian is just like, "Ha!
There
Here I
you go.
am to save you."
Yeah. So then Victor gets captured, gets thrown into prison underneath the school. Rose goes to confront him and talk to him because he says he knows something about Shadow Kissed, and she's like, "What's the?" So she goes to talk to him to try to get information. And while he's there, Natalie shows up, and she has become a Strigoi so that she can break Victor out of prison, I
Mhm.
guess. And I wanted to know if that happened in the book. If Natalie turns evil and becomes I guess she's been evil the whole time, but
Yeah.
becomes Strigoi to break her down.
Yes, she does become Strigoi.
Okay. Then Dimitri shows up
Mm-hmm.
as Victor's trying to escape because Victor beats up Rose and is like leaving. And as he's trying to escape, he gets to like the elevator to get out of the basement, and Dimitri is there. And they like square off and look at each other. And then all of a sudden, a rock falls out of the ceiling, and Dimitri kicks it into Victor's face. And I let out one of the largest what that I've ever let out watching a movie.
That's truly saying something for you.
Is that from the book? Is that one of these movies? That not counting Good, Bad, or Bad, but is that from the book? What happened there?
That does not happen in the book. I think what we're supposed to assume happened is that Victor also has earthbending powers and tried to like drop the brick to kill Dimitri, but Dimitri was too fast. Kicked it into his face.
I think the issue is that the bending skills are not set up or explained enough.
Yes.
And I had a hard whenever something like the ankle breaking and the other thing happened, my brain didn't realize somebody was doing that.
Yeah.
Like, especially in this one, I don't feel like I noticed Victor doing a thing that would
Right. Well, and this is just me surmising
Right,
because
that makes sense.
it's never confirmed that he has earthbending powers.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would have to go back and watch, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Victor does do something that indicates that he's like earthbending and making that rock fall. But it seems like the rock just falls randomly and Victor kicks it into his face, which is funnier. But I don't. Okay, that's fascinating. Then we get to the end. They've saved the day. Victor's locked or dead. No. Well,
No,
Natalie's dead.
Natalie's dead. They recapture.
They capture Victor. And we get to the end. The queen shows up again, and she gives a speech. Starts giving a speech, and Lissa just jumps in, who is like the heir, I guess, to the throne or whatever, because she's part of the royal. There's also a whole royalty thing. Which is
in the book,
convoluted
it's
nonsense.
like she could be named heir to the throne. I don't know if they actually said that she was in the movie or not.
It's the same idea that she's one of the heirs, if not the next heir to the throne or whatever. Which is a whole another layer of like, why did we even
weird?
Why do we have this weird royalty thing? It's just like too many layers here. But Lissa jumps in and cuts the queen off and gives her own cringy ass speech, just like basically telling all of the fellow students, we need to come together and stop like gossiping and slut shaming, which is all fine sentiment, but it's the weirdest kind of like wrap up speech for this movie. It's such a strange moment. I was just like, what? Okay, so now she's okay. I guess we're just doing the thing. Like the moral of the story is, I don't know, guys, let's all be a little nicer to each other. It's like, is that what I was supposed to get out of this movie? Because it doesn't really seem like it. Is that in the book? From the book?
No, and thank God, because I hated it a lot.
I agree. It was terrible. And then does the book end with at the end of the film? Carp is in the. I said in the summary, she's in the mountains nearby. And the camera pans back, and she's like seemingly leading an army of Strigoi, like hundreds, if not thousands. And it looks like they're preparing to attack the academy. And that's like our tease set up for the next movie. Spoilers that never got made. Is that how the book ends?
This never happens in the book, no. Not to say that it doesn't happen in one of the other 5 books. I have no idea. Nor will I be finding out, but it's definitely not in this one.
Okay, cool. That was it for those questions, but I got a lot more, so let's get into it in Lost in Adaptation.
Just show me the way to get out of here, and I'll be on my way.
Where is it lost?
Yes, and I want to get unlost as soon as possible.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier that Lissa's family was in a car accident. It took me a while to wrap my head around it, which again is fine. The movie is revealing this slowly, but the thing I want to ask about the car accident is the very opening scene of the movie is the car accident, like a flashes of it.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's going on. It is explained later that Lissa's family and Rose were all in this car, and eventually we'll find out that a drunk driver just veered into their lane, hit their car, killing them all. I would imagine we will find out later that it probably wasn't.
I would think
like in
that's
one of the
like
future
a
books,
reveal in a future book that they were actually like murdered.
It was actually like, somebody, one of the queen's
it was like a
something.
political killing or something.
Exactly.
Yeah,
would be my guess. But they say in this one there was a drunk driver that killed her family. And they all die except Rose and her, and she survives and is able to resurrect Rose because Rose is just barely not dead. But the thing that I would ask about is in that scene in the opening of the movie, the conversation they're having is insane. And her family are seemingly all pedants. Like they're all correcting each other's grammar until they're struck by a car and killed. And I was like, serves you right. Yeah, exactly. I was like, you're all insufferable. Like, what is happening here? And that's actually, I wondered, related back. I was like, is that why she says fornicating all the time?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe it's her. They're setting up this weird thing where her family is like,
they're like very formal in their language.
Very formal and proper because they are like from some, this like very old bloodline or whatever. So they're very like old money proper or something. I don't know. But I wanted to know if the element of them specifically being like pedants is from the book, because that was so strange to me.
So here's the thing. We never interact with Lissa's family in the book. they don't appear in any flashbacks or dreams or anything. So I really could not say if they're pedants or not. I actually did appreciate the movie including this scene, even if it was kind of weird, because we literally don't interact with them at all in the book.
I didn't mind the car accident scene or setting
Yeah.
that up or having us see that first. I just thought it was very strange from the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah,
right
they're just
before
having a very strange conversation.
very strange conversation that I was just like, what is happening? Why are we arguing about like grammar and like what? And then they get hit by a car. I'm like, what? It's
They
just,
could have been talking about anything.
it was so strange that it just really like started me off on a weird foot. So I was like, all right, whatever. Then this is a very broad question because the movie does not explain this at least not to my satisfaction. And I want to stress, I really do, because one of my biggest pet peeves and annoyances, especially with film criticism and film conversation, reaction, that sort of thing, I genuinely try to meet movies on, and then maybe this isn't even the best example, but I generally I hate when people don't watch movies on the level the movie is trying to like be like, don't watch a movie for what a movie is trying to be.
Yeah.
I find it frustrating and annoying when you can tell somebody came into a movie trying to poke holes in it, trying to like CinemaSins it or whatever. Like, I find that a very dumb way to watch movies.
Yes.
I think it's very like
it's very disingenuous
way to watch movies. I genuinely even approach the movies we watch on Good, Better, Bad in that way, to the point where there have been movies we've watched on Good, Better, Bad where I go, I actually think this is just a good movie. Like so because I actually find it very frustrating, even specifically bad movie review. I'm not going to name names, but there's a podcast that I actually like quite a bit that will watch movies that I genuinely think they just go in regardless of what the movie is doing. Like, this, we're here to make fun of this movie, so kind of no matter what, we have to make fun of this thing regardless of everything. And so I find that ridiculous. And again, this isn't this is just a complete sidetrack because I've had it in my head that when we get in reviews where it feels like all I'm doing is like poking holes and questioning and feeling confused, like I just want to get across that I'm genuinely trying to understand a movie, and I'm not trying to like play up how ridiculous a movie is just for like, humor or whatever. I genuinely want to understand and meet a movie on the level that the movie is presenting. And if a movie is just silly, goofy fun, I think that's fine and I can meet it on that level. And a movie doesn't have to be more than that. But anyways, that sidetrack aside, I just don't want, if there's a Vampire Academy fan out there, I didn't come into this came into this movie wanting to like it. It just didn't get to where I wanted it to. Anyways, back to my actual question here. I was like, man, I really hope this movie explains why this whole Moroi-Dampier relationship exists in the first place. Because that felt like something that needed to be explained.
Right. Well, when you set up very heavy lore like that,
Yes.
you expect your audience to have questions
because they do explain, like, the Moroi, the Dampier, they're half human, half vampires, and their role is they protect the Moroi, and that's their whole thing. It's what we're all committed to. We have to do that. It's like there's like this thing where like they come first above all others. They have like this the Dampier have this like ethical code basically that the Moroi always are above all others. And I was like, man, I really hope that we get some sort of like discussion or exploration or anything about like why that relationship
like
exists,
a note on the history,
where
or
it came
something.
from, where it started, why it started, why it continues. Is this going to be like are we getting into some like class thing here? You know what I mean? Because like we talk about how a lot of the Moroi are like from like royal amazing bloodlines, and the Dampier seem to be kind of like their servants. I'm like, are we gonna like go into some kind of class politics or something here? I don't know. I was just hoping for anything, and the movie gives us basically nothing. And so I was wondering if there was more in the book.
Great news. The book does not really explain this either.
Cool.
The closest we ever get to an explanation of why the Dampier are so willing to be the Moroi's lapdogs, essentially, is that the Dampier can only reproduce with Moroi. Like, they can't have children amongst themselves or with humans. That's the closest we get to an explanation. I
Okay.
guess the other explanation is that that's the way it's always been.
Right. And maybe the future books would go into that.
Yeah,
'Cause
maybe they
that
do.
does
Maybe
feel like
they
a thing
do.
that you would maybe not the first book necessarily.
I mean, they front load a lot.
Sure, but I could see that being a thing that you kind of delve into down the road.
Yeah.
Like, okay, where does this all come from? Like maybe Rose starts to question whether this whole system makes any sense. You know what I mean?
Right.
I could see that being
Yeah,
explored later.
I could see that being a plot line further on down
Sure,
the road.
and that would
for
be
sure.
fine. I'm just, if you're a big Vampire Academy fan, let me know, why does this whole thing, what's with this whole thing? What is it you say you do here? I mentioned this earlier, but the scene where Rose goes and makes out with Jesse, why did she do that? I could not parse in the movie what her motivation was for that.
Because he's like such a babe.
No, that cannot
That's
be the,
literally it. That's literally it.
really?
That's literally it. Yes, she thinks he's hot.
I thought she had some
And she wants-
ulterior motive
no.
that.
She thinks he's hot. She wants to make out with him. That's literally it.
Okay, fair. I mean, that's fine. I thought I was missing something. Like I thought there was like a genuine, like she's trying to do something or get some information or something. Okay. During one of the training scenes, Dimitri and Rose do this thing where they like flip each other. It's like a thing they do.
Mm-hmm.
And during one of the training scenes, they've been flirting and Dimitri flips Rose onto the ground and then he like straddles her and he's like pinning her to the ground. And he's like, they're like flirting back and forth. And then she says, "Got any other moves you want to show me?" And then it like quickly cuts away.
Yeah.
And I legitimately could not tell in that moment if we're supposed to infer that they then had sex. Like to me, that edit, the way it's edited would normally imply, oh, they just like the way it's cut was like,
Yeah.
oh, they went and had sex.
Yeah. Cut to black.
Because we cut before he responds or does anything. Or like think they get up, but like he doesn't say anything. And then but then I was like, but I don't think that's what, but I don't know. I just wanted to know if it was supposed to be implied that they had sex there or not, if you think.
No.
Okay.
No. Rose is like supposed to be a virgin the entire time. And her and Dimitri definitely never.
Okay, well that's bad filmmaking language in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Because to me, I was like, I couldn't tell what was supposed to happen. It just cut so abruptly. It felt like it was implying something that I guess it wasn't. There's this scene where Mia has been like the antagonist the whole time, and at some point we cut to like they're in the church, and Mia is like sobbing, and Rose like looks at her and is like, huh? And like makes a face at her, and Mia turns to her and is like, "Don't feel bad for me, feel bad for the princess." And I was like, what is happening? And I think I figured out what was going on here. I think because we see at the beginning of that scene, Lissa has like her arm around, or some boy has his arm around Lissa at like the front of the church, and they're like chit-chatting with some people, and then like Mia's watching them, and I think the boy was like previously dating Mia.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that in the moment, but I put it together after the fact. But I don't understand. All of it felt so contextless. I was like, but what is this? I didn't know that I barely knew that Mia was with this boy, and now Lissa's with this boy, and I'm supposed to know that and care how that affects Mia. And Mia knows that it's like yelling at Rose, like, "Don't feel bad for me, feel bad for the princess." What does that line mean?
I don't know what that line is supposed to mean.
I just, none of it, I felt so many moments in this movie, again, genuinely made me feel like a crazy person of like, am I missing something? Like, what is happening here? Anyways, I don't know if you have any.
I mean, I could further explain what goes on with Mia in the book.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
So I mentioned this earlier, but I just wanted you to know if you could expand on this anymore. At one point, when they find out, once Rose finds out that Karp, Mrs. Karp Miss Karp or whatever, became a Strigoi, Dimitri's talking to her about it, and he explains that she became a Strigoi to take away the pain of being undeclared or something along those lines. This is also not made any easier by that anytime that Dimitri says a line, he's impossible to understand because he has a very thick Russian accent.
Yeah.
And he kind of mumbles his lines. I think he's going for like a quiet, like
Yeah. I think he's going for like mysterious.
yeah, mysterious, cool guy.
Yeah.
So he kind of like says everything kind of quiet and mumbly, but then adding in the fact that he has like a kind of thick Russian accent makes a lot of his dialogue hard to understand. But he says something about her like doing it to take away the pain of being undeclared, and I think I kind of know what's going on here. But can you expand on what that is, or what he means, or what's going on there?
So Carp had the same spirit powers as Lissa, where she could like heal and resurrect things. And the catch with those powers, like we discussed, is that having them basically makes you like slowly deteriorate and go insane. And becoming a Strigoi cuts you off from your Moroi powers.
Oh, I did not get. So that's not. I
Yeah.
did not get that.
Yes, so you become a Strigoi and you're no longer a bender, pretty much.
I interpreted it the other way. I thought that meant that when you became Strigoi, you still had the powers, but that it didn't like that you were like free from like the
moral consequence.
yes.
Or something.
So like they didn't like negatively affect you anymore. So like I thought the way I interpreted it was that when becoming Strigoi meant she could still do her spirit powers, but that it no longer like affected a toll on her anymore or something like that. But you're saying it gets rid of your powers.
That was my understanding from the book. Yes. So basically she becomes Strigoi on purpose to keep herself from going crazy.
Okay. There's a scene at the end where once Victor captures Lissa, he's like trying to torture her to get her to use her powers on him so that he can cure his Sarkovsky syndrome or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. And I want to know if what's going on there, because the guy who's torturing her seems to be gently blowing on her ear and she's writhing around like she's dying. And I'm not saying the movie didn't explain what he was doing, but I felt like I did not get an explanation for what he was doing and how this was torturous.
Okay.
I assume magic, obviously, but
yeah. So in the book, Rose specifically says, first she says that he's using like air pressure to torture her.
okay.
Like I guess like maybe on her eardrum.
Sure, I can see that.
something.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then
like when you're, it's like a real bad, like when you're going to a plane, taking off in a plane. Yeah.
And then she also says after that he's like using it to like suffocate her, basically, so she can't breathe.
Sure. I could see that. I think you could even do that effectively. I think the way they do this in the movie,
it's not very effective.
And
it
just
looks
cheesy. He's just like. He's like blowing on her ear in a way that just looks really cheesy.
Yeah.
Whereas I can imagine directing and editing and shooting that scene in a way where he's like, and it's like, and she's like, ooh, and like, I don't know. I can imagine re-editing and reshooting that in a way that effectively demonstrates what is going on, even without saying what is going on. But the way they do it in the movie, they may even have an explicit line where he says what she's doing, but I missed it, and what he's doing looks so goofy that I could not handle it. All right, those are all my questions. I get to shut up now, and we get to find out what Katie thought was better in the book.
You like to read?
Oh, yes. I love to read.
What do you like to read?
Everything.
All right, I'm going to speed run my sections because this episode's already long. Someone does leave a dead fox for Lissa to find in the book, but if the idea was supposed to be for her to use her powers and heal it, so I thought it made more sense. In the book, she like finds it on her bed and not hanging over a random doorway. Like if the idea is for her to heal it, I don't know why you would hang it. Also,
yeah, I think they just did that in the movie because it's more dramatic,
right?
Obviously,
yeah.
And maybe they didn't want people to think they're ripping off The Godfather.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
I thought putting the queen in a giant fur queen robe was really silly. Like the crown was already silly, but putting her in like a cheap looking like Party City Queen of England robe made it really look like a game of dress up. I just really didn't like that detail.
It also just that whole
stupid.
element is just so unexplored. You're like, oh,
yeah, you're like,
also
okay, I guess,
all right, whatever.
yeah, sure.
I like that actress. What's her name from? She's been in lots of stuff. She was in Once Upon a Time, I think, right?
Who was it?
Oh, was that not her? I thought she was in Once Upon a Time.
She's in the movie so briefly, I didn't even clock
I don't know.
who
That
it
actress,
was.
I've seen her in stuff before. She's been in a handful of like shows and stuff I've watched over the years, and she's usually good. But anyways.
The part in the movie where Rose attacks the mall kiosk guy annoyed me because do we not think that this wouldn't cause a huge scene? She like puts him in a headlock and then they just like walk away. Like I agree that mall kiosk guys are annoying, but like come on.
It's true.
I thought the Psyhounds were pretty silly looking. Not super great special effects.
I thought the special effects were fine. I was expecting worse. I'll say that. I was
Fair
expecting
enough.
them to look worse than they did, and they don't look great, but it's not like...
Well, then the thing that I don't understand is that you said in the prequel that they were originally going to use actual like dogs.
Apparently they filmed it with actual dogs, and they just thought it wasn't intimidating.
They decided to like go back and use like CGI.
Yeah, and specifically Rochelle Mead like drew them.
Which is the weird part to me because in the book they're just described as looking like wolves. Like what we saw in the movie didn't look at all like what I felt like was described in the book.
I don't know. Yeah, they look more like they kind of look like wolfish, but they look like just big black dogs basically.
Yeah,
like hellhounds or something.
Yeah,
I thought they were fine. They were uninspired, but like it wasn't. I don't know. It's like I've seen way worse these kind of things in movies.
Okay, so my last thing here, all of these were actually complaints about the movie, and not really
Fair.
things I
Yeah,
liked
honestly,
in the book.
that is true. Yeah,
But my last complaint about the movie is about the headmistress of the school, Kurova.
Yeah,
because are
good
we
point.
not going to address the fact that she was obviously in on all of this somehow?
Yeah.
Because she like tries to knock out Rose
She
to
gets
like
a needle
stop
out,
her
yeah.
from saving Lissa. And then nothing ever comes of that. It's just
Rose ends
never
up
brought
knocking,
up again.
Rose takes the needle and injects her with it to knock her out. And then, it's like never addressed.
Yeah, it's
again.
never addressed. And none of that was in the book.
Really?
And I don't understand why that decision was made.
It seems like they're clearly setting up a later...
Yeah.
Like a later story thing that
Yeah.
maybe in the second book, it's revealed that she's working with Victor or something, or who knows. But yeah, it is very strange that it's never mentioned again. Like Rose doesn't even like a moment where
they
Rose
never
turns to
even
Lisa at the
say
end and it's like,
anything.
oh, by the way, the headmistress like tried to
She's- yeah,
drug me.
she's
Like,
She's like in on this, I think.
That's you're right. That's very strange. All right, that was everything Katie thought was better in the book. It's time to find out what she thought was better in the movie.
My life has taught me one lesson, Hugo, and not the one I thought it would. Happy endings only happen in the movies.
The very beginning, when the girls are trying to escape, they like light their motorcycle on fire and like push it down the road. That doesn't happen in the book. I thought it was more interesting than anything that happened in that scene in the book.
Fair.
So, yeah. I liked that the movie added a Strigoi attack early
Is
on.
that when they get to the school?
Yeah, when they're like arriving at the school and they get attacked.
Yeah.
So in the book, the Strigoi are kind of this boogeyman that never really pays off. We don't interact with any Strigoi until the very end when Natalie turns Strigoi, and I kind of feel like that only half counts because we already knew Natalie. And I just feel like if you're gonna set up a big bad, like give me the big bad. I spent about 85% of the book thinking that there was no way we weren't working towards a conclusion that the Strigoi aren't actually evil because we never actually met one.
Huh.
Like, and I was like, okay, surely we're working towards this idea that this is all propaganda, right?
Oh, okay.
And maybe we are in like
I don't
future
think so,
books.
based on...
I don't think so either. Like based on,
the
but
rest
then
of the
like,
movie.
yeah, like based on what happens with Natalie and everything, I don't think that's actually the case. It was very strange to me.
I could see the idea of setting up the Strigoi, kind of like Twilight does with like the, which I also found annoying, but the whatever.
Oh, the Volturi.
The Volturi. You know what I mean? Like we set that up in like the first book, but we don't actually see them until the second or third book.
Right.
So like I can kind of understand if you're doing that, if you know you're planning to write like a series, like kind of saving that card, like only giving us one of them, like Natalie in the first one, and then saving more of them for later. I could see it, but I thought it worked well in the movie, like, or
I
worked
was
fine
just,
in
it
the
was
movie.
the strangest thing to me was that there were like several points throughout the first most of the book that made me think we were working towards this conclusion of like propaganda and like they're not
Okay.
actually evil
Yeah.
and blah 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 blah. But then at the end, when Natalie turns Strigoi, it kind of seems like they're just evil.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you've read more of the Vampire Academy novels, please let me know. I thought it was funny that you mentioned that there wasn't enough of the Moroi using their elemental powers because there's so much more of them using them in the book than there in the movie than there is in the book.
I just think if you're gonna add earth and fire and water bending in and make it like a whole thing, and then especially have like very specific plot points related to that, I needed to see more of it because all I remember seeing until the very end, like we see Christian light that dude on fire, but we get that one scene early on when she's explaining like,
Yeah.
oh, during the montage where she's like, at fourth period we go off to do combat training and all the Moroi go to learn magic, and we see like a montage of them like lighting candles and like whatever. But then that, and then the scene where Christian lights that dude on fire are like I was like, are there other scenes?
There's a scene where I think Mia uses like makes the water fountain like
Oh,
splash
yes.
on Lissa.
Yes, but even that was so minimal that I was like,
Well, but even the silly stuff with like the moving brick and like the sidewalk moving, I thought was more like it was more of an example of them using their powers than what we see in the book.
But see, those things were things that I didn't think I had I was like, I mean, I guess that had to be what it was, but I don't know. It just felt so half-baked. Like the whole water or the elemental bending thing felt like she saw Avatar: The Last Airbender and was like, this is sick. I want to add this to my thing. And then just kind of added it without really thinking through it in any way.
I'm not unconvinced that isn't what happened.
And it just felt so, again, undercooked, where I was just like, when those moments happened, like the hole in the ground and the ankle breaking, I'm like, okay, obviously somebody did some sort of magic, but like, what? I don't know. It didn't, I don't know. It didn't work for me.
This book came out in 2007. I'm pretty sure Avatar started airing in 2005.
Oh, yeah.
So like, I'm not unconvinced that because it is very half-baked in the book as well.
To be fair, Avatar for The Last Airbender, not the first thing to do like elemental
not at all.
magic bending or whatever. It's been around forever. So,
but it was a huge part of the cultural zeitgeist at the time that this book was being written.
Yeah.
The movie specifically says that they wipe the memories of the human feeders that they have on campus for them to like drink blood from, which I don't believe is mentioned in the book, but I thought that was a detail that made sense, that they would like wipe their memories. Natalie licking the blood off of the wall and like doing like forensic chemistry with it.
Oh, that was
gross,
fun. Yeah.
but I thought it was fun, and I thought it was an interesting way to utilize the fact that they're vampires, which, let's face it, isn't actually all that
really
important.
Isn't. That's I think
really
the thing that's
isn't.
most annoying to me.
They could have just been elemental magic users, and the story would be exactly the same.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's just like the hat on the hat thing. It's like, okay, just pick one.
Yes.
Make them
Pick a
vampires
lane.
or make them airbender, like, like element benders. Like, do one of those two things. Like, why are we doing both of them?
Yeah.
Where it just felt so convoluted and unrelated. Like, I think that's the other thing. It just felt like two popular ideas slammed together without really any reason that makes sense. Because like, to me, what makes more sense, and who knows, it's magic, you can do whatever you want with it, but like, to me, if you're gonna do Vampire Academy and they're gonna do magic, have them do old world like spells and potions and that kind of, you know what I mean? Like, have them do like throwing runes and like doing that kind of magic and stuff. That feels more vampire-y to me. Or you know,
have them like climb walls or some shit.
Yeah,
like,
you can, and you can do stuff like that. But the element bending just feels wholly unrelated to the vampire thing. It's just like, what?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I didn't mind the Mrs. Carp video diaries. The movie doesn't do a whole lot with it, but I thought it was a pretty decent like visual aid.
Yeah.
There was one line that I thought was kind of funny. At one point, Natalie surprises them, and Rose like almost punches her in the face, and then goes, "Watch out! You do not want to have to get a nose job in Montana."
That was also the only time I realized, oh, this takes place in Montana.
Yes,
Why is this in Montana?
I don't know.
I guess they just wanted like a remote.
Yeah,
Is that where it is in the book?
It is. It is set in Montana in the book. Yeah, and I almost think she was trying to get the same, like kind of Pacific Northwesty vibe as Twilight has.
Yeah.
But Twilight has an actual reason for taking place in that area.
Yeah, and Montana's also
this
not
kind of
remotely
like
the Pacific
doesn't.
Northwest.
Well, I
It's-
know that, but
yeah.
I mean, I was like, I feel like she was trying to go for like a
Right.
similar,
Yeah.
like forests and like whatever.
I think she was just going. I don't know. Maybe she's from Montana, but like I definitely think it was like I want a remote, like a place where I can have this school where it seems like it would be like in the middle. It's in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Like, kind of.
And that is the reason given in the book
So
for
let's
why
pick
it's
a
in
state
Montana.
that's like nobody lives there,
Right.
Which Montana is one of the main ones. It's like Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakotas. So
The only possibly funnier place to have set this would have been the Dakotas. Anyway, I don't know if it fully works within the larger context because I had so much trouble following this movie. But I appreciated that the movie at least tried to say that Mrs. Carp wiped Rose and Lissa's memories of why they left the school in the first place. Because the book teased the reason that they left for so long, especially for being in Rose's point of view, because she should have known, right? She should have known.
what should she have known? Oh,
Why they left.
Yeah, right.
But the book teases it and drags it out for so long, and then it ends up being this big like letdown of like, oh, they were compelled to leave by Mrs. Carp. And even when we find out that reason, it doesn't explain why at the beginning of the book Lissa is like so viscerally upset about coming back.
I'm gonna be honest, none of that made sense to me in the movie.
I know, I'm sorry. This was like a huge frustration of mine was
Yeah.
like the way that the book revealed information, because we're in a first person perspective, but we're not getting information that we should have.
That the first person
and
perspective
there's
person should have,
no real reason given for why we're not
right.
getting
So
that
you're just like, why don't you
information.
know this? Yeah.
So when the movie was like, oh, she wiped their memories, I was like, thank God, an explanation for why I don't have an explanation.
I'll be honest. If you asked me why they left the school, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Why did they leave the school?
They left the school because Mrs. Carp compelled them
Why
to
did
leave
Mrs.
the
Carp
school.
compel them to leave the school?
Because because she knew that Lissa also had the spirit
Right.
powers, and it was either trying to protect her, possibly from Victor, because
Okay.
when we first meet her, she's like super paranoid, and she keeps talking about how like they came for me and they'll come for you,
Right.
which I would presume
Yes.
she means Victor.
That makes sense.
Although that's never confirmed. Or if we are believing that Mrs. Carp was actually like evil the whole time, she's trying to get them to leave so that the Strigoi can get Lissa. In the book, we find out that Natalie killed one of the teachers in order to become Strigoi. And in the movie, she kills like her crush, like the
Yeah.
guy she likes. And the book spends so much time dumping on Natalie for no real reason, and it feels so mean-spirited that I actually appreciated that the movie let her have like a power moment with the guy that she had a crush on instead of having her have to like sadly take down an old man.
I don't know. Okay. I'll take your word for it. That doesn't sound better to me that she just murders this guy.
I mean, either way, she's murdering like an innocent person. All right, final note here. I can also appreciate that Rose got to help kill Natalie at the end. In the book, Dimitri dispatches her pretty quickly by himself, and which I will grant makes sense since Strigoi are supposed to be like overpowered and Rose is still in training. But it also felt a little anticlimactic having him just like bust in and save the day. So Rose getting to help, I thought, was kind of a nice compromise.
Yeah, she just strangles her with a belt.
She helped.
No, I know. She does help, but it's just the way she helps is like, oh, Jesus, all right. That was it for everything Katie thought was better in the movie. Let's go ahead and find out what she thought the movie nailed.
As I expected, practically perfect in every way.
The movie actually gets it's actually a pretty faithful adaptation.
I can imagine that because it makes no sense. So
yeah.
that's how you know an adaptation's bad, or how not bad. That's one of the reasons that you can't adapt books directly, like so many people want you to, is because when you do it, they become incoherent messes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We talked about how both open with Lissa feeding from Rose, and then like almost immediately Rose looks out the window and sees somebody watching them. They run from them. Dimitri immediately takes her out when she tries to fight him. Dimitri has tattoos on the back of his neck for every Strigoi that he's killed. Lissa uses compulsion to get Kurova to keep Rose in school instead of like expelling her. Their classes happen at night because they're vampires.
Yeah.
Rose decides to go to church, and she picks up on the priest saying "shadow kissed Anna," which kicks off her whole investigation of Saint Vladimir and all that. Mia spreads a rumor about Jesse and whatever the fuck the other guy was named, both feeding from Rose. Christian sets a guy on fire to stop him from bullying Lissa. The queen shows up and randomly chastises Lissa in front of everyone.
Real quick, that line, Mia spreads a rumor about Jesse and the other guy both feeding from Rose, is one of those things that in the movie is incoherent and makes no sense because I don't have enough time. The movie is doing so many things so quickly. Your brain doesn't even, I didn't have time to wrap my head around the fact that what we're doing is like a weird metaphor for like her being a whore and like having sex with multiple dudes and like that. But because of the context, like that's a fine metaphor and like I could see what you're trying to do there and like, but there's so much going on in the movie that I literally didn't even parse what any of that was. Like, I don't know. It just goes back to what we just said that trying to directly translate a book into a film and include like every little bit in detail that the book has, like not every little bit in detail, obviously, but like so much of that stuff leaves you with a movie that is so overstuffed with like detail that just does not work in a film because your brain can't. You're doing so much simultaneous world building, character development, and plot exposition all at once that you can't grasp any of it.
Yeah,
especially when it's done
too many
poorly.
pieces on the board.
Too many pieces, and you just can't. So, like, I can't sit there and appreciate. Oh, we're doing like a fun, or not a fun, but we're doing like an interesting metaphor for like college, or for like high school, or for like high school / college sexual exploits, and like the way that the social capital around that, and the way the drama and the fallout from all that. We're doing that while we're also establishing a world where there's like vampires who do earthbending, and I'm just like, so you don't have time to do any of it.
No.
Anyways. Sorry.
Where was I in my list? The crew goes shopping at the mall to get dresses for the ball. Mason makes Jesse and Ray confess / apologize to Rose about the slut-shaming thing. Victor kidnaps Lissa to force her to continually heal him. Lissa gets a power-up from Rose to heal Christian. Victor does a villain monologue from his prison cell and explains a bunch of stuff to Rose at the very end. Dimitri's excuses for not being able to be with Rose are the same. And then at the end, Rose has a moment with the Raven that Lissa brought back to life.
Sweet. Amazing. Fantastic. All right, let's get to a few odds and ends before the final verdict. This actually blew my mind. As we were watching the movie, I was like, this actress playing Rose, I was like, I know this isn't uncommon, but Rose looks like a 28-year-old.
Yeah.
And then I looked it up and I was like, the actress was actually like 18 when she filmed this.
Crazy. I mean, I will say,
A high school student.
like 2014, like makeup
and
trends
and that's probably what it
were
is. Yeah.
very like that was like the full face era, and it was very like it made you look older than you were.
And that particular actress, I guess, maybe just looks older. I was like, she looked like an adult, like a 30-year-old to me. And I think you're right. It probably is the makeup. That's usually what it is. It's usually the hair and makeup that makes that happen. It's why when you look at like old yearbooks of high school from like the 50s, everybody looks like they're 40 years old already. It's because of the hair and makeup primarily.
They're styled in a way that we're used to seeing on 40-year-olds.
Yes, exactly. And so that's probably what it was. But I was like, did they cast an adult, like a 30-year-old in this? And apparently not. Yeah, I loved the detail that the movie knew they needed to just plaster the names of the different vampire classes, Moroi, Strigoi, and Dampier. They're like, nobody's going to remember this.
No.
We got to put it, and they're hard, like they're weird words.
Yeah, they're like odd words for
like
an English speaker.
When they introduce it, they just put the word in giant white bold text and it floats across the screen like in the background as she's talking about them. I was like, good. They just gave up on that one. They're just like, put it on the screen. I don't know. Maybe somebody will remember it that way.
I started laughing pretty much as soon as we were introduced to Dimitri, because he's supposed to be like the hottest of the hot guys. And that man was not very hot.
I don't disagree. I don't think he's he reminded me a lot. His eyes, I think he looks like Josh Hartnett a little bit. In his eyes. But like a poor man's Josh Hartnett. And the big thing to me was more so than like just physically, he's just wasn't a good actor.
Yeah.
Like his performance was bad.
Yes.
And I don't know, that may have very well been, he's a Russian guy who's I think mostly been in like Russian films.
Mm-hmm.
It's very possible that it's just he's bad because he's acting in English and it's, you know, his second language, and he's just. But man, he reminded me, for good, bad, or bad fans, he reminded me a lot of the dude from the Incubus.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way he delivered lines was like that stilted.
Yeah, I was assuming his accent was real, but he was such a bad actor that it made it sound like it might not be real.
Yeah. And again, it's very possible that he's a fine actor when he's speaking Russian or whatever, but like the way the lines are delivered in English, it's so stilted, it sounds ridiculous. Like it just sounds.
The other thing that like struck me about that choice in actor was that like his physical type, like his body type, he was very like stocky and like built. Yeah. Which makes sense for his character. And I'm not saying that body type isn't attractive or can't be attractive, but it's also like so far from the typical like YA romance type that I was very like caught off guard by it.
I think also the thing was that, because I saw a photo of this actor with his normal hair, like a short haircut, and he's much more attractive with like, I just think that hairstyle doesn't suit his face, maybe is like part of it potentially.
That could be.
Because I saw a photo of him with like short hair and I was like, yeah, this is like a handsome guy. I don't know. I think it's just a combination of those factors just made it like he didn't have leading man energy.
No,
like,
he really did not, bless his heart.
Yeah.
This was a little detail that I just wanted to bring up for posterity. The character of Mia, I think, was unironically named after the crown princess of Genovia from the Princess Diaries.
Oh, really?
Because her name is Mia.
Yeah.
And her like regular last name is Mia Thermopolis in the Princess Diaries, but her like royal last name is Rinaldi.
Really?
And the character in this book is Mia Rinaldi.
Very well.
Sure, I guess. Sure, yeah. Another random line from the book that I just wanted to include because it cracked me up. This is about Christian, and Rose thinks to herself, and although he wasn't Strigoi himself, some people thought he wasn't far off. with the way he always wore black and kept to himself. And I was like, damn, even vampires hate goth kids in this universe.
You go to an 800-year-old school that's called
Right?
St. Vladimir's School for
You
Vampires.
guys are literally vampires, and you're going to be like, ugh, that guy wears black all the time. Jesus.
Unbelievable. That you mentioned that scene where they're at the mall and Rose beats up that mall clerk guy.
Yeah.
The jacket she's wearing in that scene while they're walking through the mall, it is a red leather jacket that I swear is the exact same jacket that Emma wears in Once Upon a Time.
I love that.
It's like got the same kind of like
It's like a moto style.
where it
jacket.
has those like stitching and stuff on it. I was like, that's Emma's jacket that she wears in Once Upon a Time. Speaking of right after that, so they go to the mall to buy their dresses for the party, the big like ball or whatever. When they get to the ball, they have the big like we're gonna go own the shit out of this party or whatever. And then we get like the slow-mo montage of them like badass strolling into the party. And even as a man who is me, I was like, those dresses are not nearly like memorable enough for this like slow-mo party entrance moment.
Like they're fine.
They're fine
They look
dresses.
nice.
They look
They look nice,
And-
but it's not like a ha-ha
it's not
moment.
like a wow. Yeah. Like, and particularly like Rose's dress, they make a big deal out of it. And again, it's a nice looking dress. And it actually comparatively, for like one of those kind of dresses that has aged fairly well. Like, it's kind of a timeless, like black strapless
it's not
dress.
like super of its time.
Yeah, it's not super dated, but it's also not super like, wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just like, yep, just sure. I don't know. Just whatever.
Did you catch the screenwriter 80s reference in this?
Yeah.
Where
Wait, the guy who wrote Heathers referenced Pretty in Pink in his
when Mason is like kind of pursuing Rose at the dance and she's like, whoa, ducky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure all of your teenage fans in 2004 recognize and understand that reference, man.
Good one. I think they should have got so we're talking about Victor. He's played by Gabriel Byrne, who's a great actor. I don't think he was right for this role. He's not like terrible or anything, but the whole time all I could think of who they should have got to play this role is Robert Carlyle.
Yeah.
The guy who plays Rumpelstiltskin in Once Upon a Time.
Yeah, he would have been great.
He would have been perfect.
He would have been incredible.
And he would have brought the level of camp and over the top nonsense that you need for this role.
Too good for this trash movie.
Gabriel Byrne's too good for this trash movie. Gabriel Byrne's a great actor too. Like because Gabriel Byrne's he's what's his name in Little Women, right? Isn't he the professor in Little Women?
I think you're right. Yeah.
He's been in lots of stuff. Great actor. I just don't think he doesn't, or at least not in this movie. He does not bring the level of like over the top,
right?
Especially once he becomes the villain at the end, he's not nearly fun enough.
No.
And all I just because especially the scene where like he's talking to him from the jail cell at the end, all I'm picturing is Rumpelstiltskin in the jail cell Once Upon a Time.
All magic comes with a price.
Like he just would have been perfect. And it's funny because Gabriel Byrne kind of looks like him. Like the kind of character he is kind of looks. I think he even has a cane that he walks around with at times. It's like Robert Carlyle would have been. It felt like they wrote the role for him. Yeah. And then he just didn't do it.
He was busy filming Once Upon a Time.
But I feel like they missed out. He would have crushed that role. I have to see who they got for the TV show. Maybe they got Robert Carlyle for the TV show. And then my last note here was, I don't know whose idea it was, but when they get to the house to rescue Lissa and they're like fighting everybody, I don't know whose idea it was for this, but in one of the moments, Rose, she's up on the balcony, like fighting somebody. And the way she fights this person is she leaps onto this dude's chest and like wraps her legs around him and then just like headbutts him over and over again.
She just like slams her head into his head like
it's the
multiple
weirdest
times.
Choreography choice for her. Like I don't understand why they thought that would make sense for her to do in a fight. Like
no, because it doesn't make sense. And like, listen, I don't know anything about combat, but I have to imagine a direct headbutt is like a thing you can only do once.
It's complicated, I think, but it's just such a strange, like, I don't understand. Like, we've shown her learn to fight. Like, she went to she's training to do normal fighting. Like, why does she fight she fights like a monster? Like, that kind of choreography is something you would give to like an enraged monster in like a movie that like runs and leaps onto somebody and like wraps their limbs around them and then just starts like headbutting them over and over again. That's not the choreography you give to like your heroine. It's very strange, and I don't understand it. And I don't get why, like, because I was trying to okay, like, what is the character? Because a lot of times, like, you want to say something about your character through the choreography you give them.
Sure.
But I'm like, what are we saying here? Like, the way she wraps her legs around him in kind of like a sexual way. Like, again, she like, it's just like, it's very strange. And then the headbutting, I'm like, we never established that she has like a particularly hard, like, if you're going to do that, you set that up with like, there's a joke earlier where Dimitri punches her in the head and he like shakes his hand. He's like, you have the hardest head I've ever, like, I don't know. You got to do something. Like, why is that? It's just a mind-boggling decision.
That would require a level of writing that this movie was clearly not capable of.
But that's the thing that makes it more infuriating. Just do a normal thing. Just have her like fight him. Like, just she's been combat training. Like, that's the whole point of going to the school. Just have her fight him like a normal person. Why would you do this extra weird thing if you haven't set up whatever? It's a little thing, but those kind of decisions, it blows my mind. I don't understand. Whatever. I'm sorry. I'm done. As always, you can do us a favor by heading over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Goodreads, Threads, any of those places. Follow us and engage. We'd love to hear what you have to say about Vampire Academy. Really, we're excited for that for our next prequel episode. So get that feedback in. You can also help us out by going over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to our show. If you enjoy it, please drop us a 5-star rating. Write us a nice little review. Helps get the show out to more people. And if you want to support us at the highest possible level, or whatever, go to patreon.com/thisfilm. I'm done. My brain is done. Patreon.com/thisfilmislit. Support us there monetarily. Get access to some bonus content. We just finished watching the first Addams Family movie for our bonus episode for October. We're going to watch Addams Family Values, and then we're going to release our Halloween episode here in just a few days. For our bonus episode, that's at the $5 and up level. We do one of those every single month. And at the $15 and up level, you get access to priority recommendations. If you have something you would really like for us to talk about, you support us for $15 a month, recommend it, and we will add it to our list. And this one, in fact, was a patron request from...
This was a request from Nathan.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, I guess.
Thanks, I guess. Thanks, I hate it. All right, Katie, it's time for the final verdict.
Sentence fast, verdict after. That's stupid.
There are a lot of properties that one could compare Vampire Academy to. For the time period, Twilight and Harry Potter are obvious, although I don't really think it's much like either of those. As I was reading, I was also reminded of Divergent, Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Click, and strangely enough, Shadow and Bone. But here's what I think Rochelle Mead was actually trying to do. Gossip Girl with vampires. It's all there. The horde of ultra-wealthy, ultra-privileged teenagers, the prep school setting, the gossiping and politicking and catty backstabbing, and the who's banging who of it all. And the fact that you don't really like or trust anyone because they all kind of suck. All you have to do is sprinkle some fantasy elements on top. But that's where this book went horribly wrong. There is simply too much going on here. It was Vampire Gossip Girl with 3 different classes of vampire, elemental magic users, a forbidden romance that isn't well set up, queer vibes that I'm still not sure were intentional or not, a spooky mystery about a missing teacher, a chosen one coming into her mysterious powers, a twist villain that isn't well set up, half-baked feminist critique, half-baked commentary on mental health, a big bad that amounts to almost nothing, etc., and so forth. And that's not to say that you can't have a good YA fantasy series that has a lot of different elements and leans into heavy world building. More successful properties do it all the time. For example, Shadow and Bone. One of the big differences is that those series usually give their world and lore building some room to breathe. The other difference, in my opinion, is that this series lacked a true audience POV character, someone who's also being introduced to elements of the world for the first time. For example, in Shadow and Bone, Alina has grown up in Ravka, but then she gets thrown into the unfamiliar world of the Grisha, and we get to learn about that alongside her. As a character, Rose was unable to function this way, and the world building suffered because of it. It was painfully obvious when the book was choosing to just not share information with us, which was really, really annoying. Now, based on everything I've just said, you might think that I'm about to give this one to the movie. But you might be wrong, because this movie was an unintelligible mess. I had trouble following it even after reading the entire book. I can't begin to imagine what Brian's experience was like.
And you're all aware now, having experienced my meltdown over the last 2 hours.
So in the case of Vampire Academy, I think I have no choice but to give this one to the book, on the grounds of being 10% more comprehensible than the movie.
I agree. Having not read the book, the movie was terrible, and not the good kind of terrible, unfortunately. Katie, what's next?
Up next, we are continuing spooky season. I guess we're closing out spooky season with a horror classic, Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah. I'm interested. I know nothing about this. This is one of those movies that I've heard a lot. Like, obviously, you hear of. It's a very famous, popular movie, but I've never seen it and never really had a desire to see it. But I am excited to watch it. So I'm looking forward to checking it out.
I've seen pieces of it. And
I've never seen a lick of it.
The novel was written by Ira Levin, who also wrote The Stepford Wives, which I remember really enjoying. So I'm looking forward to reading it, watching it. I know that it's horror films are often commentary on the time period, and this one I think is very much that. So I'm really looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, we get to talk about our first film directed. Well, that's probably not true. I was going to say our first film directed by a rapist, but that's almost assuredly
assuredly not true.
Our first film directed by this specific rapist would be the case. So we'll get into that in the prequel. But come back in 2 weeks' time. We're talking about Rosemary's Baby. But in 1 week's time, we'll be previewing Rosemary's Baby and hearing everything you lovely people had to say about Vampire Academy. So please get that feedback in, and please come back. Until that time, guys, gals, non-binary pals, and everybody else.
Keep reading books.
Keep watching movies.
And keep being awesome.